Good evening and welcome to the public board meeting of the Board of Education for SD 72 Campbell River on this Tuesday, January 10th, 2023. I'd like to begin our evening's meeting by acknowledging that we are here on the traditional territories of the Lakota people. I'd like to express my gratitude at their stewardship of these beautiful lands so that we as settlers can live, work, and play here. Just some really quick comments. I wish to wish everyone around our table and in our system a really joyful and happy new year. I hope that 2023, the year of the rabbit, will bring you much in the way of gratitude and opportunities. And happiness. Yes. Lots of happiness. I also would like to acknowledge.
All right,
Joyce, stop disturbing me for the opening remarks. I'd also like to acknowledge that January 27th is International Family Literacy Day. Here in Campbell River, we celebrate Family Literacy Week at a community level with a huge selection of free community events which celebrate parents as their child's first and best teacher. If you want more information, please feel free. It'll be all over the community social media channels, and I believe that the school district will have some updates as well. And that's it for my remarks, and on to Superintendent Morrow.
Well, thank you very much, Chair Kitty and Chair Eddie.
Chair Kitty.
First little bit of puffiness, taken care of. So thank you very much, Chair Eddie, for those comments. I would just echo your sentiment of wishing everybody around this table, and of course our extended learning community, a happy new year, and welcoming people back from break that were able to have a break. And just to share my genuine excitement about the learning that's going to take place this year, and as well timing a new year with the opportunity to be collecting data and working with the board around their renewed strategic plan and what that will unfold like this year. But it took a moment just to reflect a little bit about where we were at this time last year. And if you can think back, even though it wasn't, even though it's just a short time ago, it feels quite a bit different in that we actually delayed the return of students by a full week in anticipation and to allow for staff to make plans for anticipated closures of schools due to extended illness. And while illness is still present, obviously throughout the winter and continues to be a concern, I'm grateful, one, that we don't have the same complexity in regards to that, but two, I think one of the opportunities that COVID presented was an opportunity to become more aware of some of those positions and roles that often can be overlooked. I remember that first experience I had of going to get groceries, that first time in the midst of the real concerns that were emerging in March, and the gratitude I had that there was an employee there to scan those groceries and put them in a bag because they were an essential service. And I think of the work that custodians, we really recognize the contribution that custodians make in all of their work sites and certainly in our district. But in addition, and I think this is something that we still need to be mindful of, is that each day in our district, we have a number of TTOCs and casual staff that report to wherever the need is to cover for the absence of one of our regular staffed employees. That's an incredibly complex role. Could mean a different work site every single day. Certainly it would mean on those days where you go to potentially a school or a work site for the very first time, some of the social awkwardness of meeting and greeting and figuring out where things are. But each and every day, we have a professional group of staff who are present to ensure that the continuity of student learning continues and supports their colleagues who need to be away. And so they can often be unsung because they don't technically belong to any specific site. But they are seen and deeply appreciated for the work that they do each and every day to ensure that the needs of our students are met. And so I just thought particularly as we note that there are shortages of staff across the province And my gratitude that we have a district that at this time has replacement staff to ensure that students' learning can continue to be supported. So I just wanted to start the new year with a shout out to the casuals and TTOC staff who do such a great job on behalf of the kids and our community every single year. So thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Morrow. Moving on to agenda item 3, the approval of the minutes, and the suggested motion reads that the minutes of the meeting of December 13th, 2022 are hereby approved as circulated. So moved by Vice Chair Gillis, seconded by Trustee Harper. Any discussion? All those in favor? So moved. Is there any business arising from the minutes? Trustee Hagan.
I was wondering how that parent portal was working out that they were sending home. And it was launched, I guess it would have been at that time. I was wondering if we've had any feedback from parents so far.
Absolutely. Would you like to add that as an agenda item, or can you address that now,
I
Superintendent?
just needed a quick answer.
Yeah, I would probably defer to our communications manager, Jennifer.
We've actually had some really positive feedback coming through the strategic plan survey so far, but we're looking to do a survey of parents in February to get more information about access and their use of it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Hagan. Any other business arising from the minutes? Seeing none, we'll move on to any additions or alterations to the agenda. And the suggested motion for the approval of the agenda reads that the agenda is hereby approved as circulated. May I have a mover? Trustee Hagan, seconded by Trustee McMahon. All those in favor? So moved. And on to Vice Chair Gillis for the report of board decisions from January 10th, 2023 confidential meeting.
Well, our confidential meeting dealt with issues of personnel and some discussion of property.
Thank you, Trustee Gillis. Seeing no correspondence or public or agenda submissions, we'll move right into 11A, which is an update on the Student and Family Affordability Fund by Brenna Ewing and Deb Martel.
Good evening, trustees. So I'm Brenna Ewing, Director of Living Support Services.
I'm Deb Marteau. I'm District Principal for Indigenous Education and ELEC.
Yeah, and we're here to give you an update on the Student and Family Affordability Fund, which I think we presented to the board in November around the funds for it, but this is just a quick update.
I'll apologize. I was supposed to be there, but I was home with COVID.
We're happy she's back.
I'm back.
Yes.
We'll do just a little review for yourselves and maybe the audience at home around. So our district was given $607,563 of the $60 million provincial fund that was given to districts in order to help support families with the rising costs. And so the requirements of the fund were that we needed to consult with various partner groups, and the funds needed to be as flexible, private, and stigma-free as possible. And it needed to be on the food security in addition to, and on top of the meal programs or any programs we already had in place. And then also the plan was to offset costs for like school supplies, education and school related fees, clothing, footwear, school sports, all those kind of things. I will go into some details of how it's
Great to recognize Minister Whiteside also for realizing that families are dealing with extra hardships at home.
Okay, so it was a multi-tiered approach. Again, this is just a bit of a reminder. So 3 levels, and we'll walk you through where we are in each of these. So the district-based initiatives, tier 1, the school-based initiatives, tier 2, and then those specialized initiatives, which were tier 3. The details. Oh.
So when we look at the district-based initiatives, this particular one, we put aside 75,000, but this was mainly for what the schools are looking at with school fees. So whether it's direct school supplies or courses that potentially have a substantial fee attached to it, such as the hockey school, courses and different things. So currently we've utilized the 33,000. But recognizing also we're coming to the end of our first semester and then courses will roll over. So we expect more fee coming up from the schools, the high schools this next month.
And then, yeah, and then at the end of the year, we're expecting typically elementary school fees will start to be collected like in May and June. So some of these funds would likely offset the cost for the coming school year. So we feel like we're right on target in the area.
Sure, because the school-based initiatives, we created an application for the schools to look at what their particular needs are in the 2 criteria areas, whether it's subsidizing or creating new ways to support nutritional programs for kids, and then also the different unique ways that we can reach children and families. And so looking at all of the different schools, these are samples of things that the district throughout the schools have put forward their proposals. Some of them have started, some of them are just taking place. So you can see that we currently already have a variety of meal programs, such as, the breakfast and lunch and backpack, but there's different ways to enhance those programs. Some of the schools don't have kitchens to implement where they can actually make soup for, kids that are, in need, or some put together sandwiches and things. So there's equipment, that is being there. Some are looking at providing some little relief staffing to support meal prep and different things. And of course, food. Christmas hampers and the giving tree was a very giving tree. I think that was a really nice one. Different than putting together hampers. The high schools and middle schools put together just a tree that had all kinds of things that a student that might need something can go and help themselves with. So again, individualizes it for the student. Doesn't feel like it's a real handout. And it was just a really nice way for them to just go select something off the tree.
And like mittens, toques, winter gear, that kind of thing. Obviously, that's the stigma-free piece. Just take something off the tree.
And then again, just going through this very quickly, looking at clothing, seasonal clothing. Yes, in winter we often have kids that don't have appropriate cold weather, but we all know spring is coming and we have our Muddy Buddy gear that needs to be ready for our families that don't have rain gear or boots and things. So kids, the schools are making sure that they have sets in the schools to help out there. Bus passes and transportation, things like that, where families, especially some of our high school, middle school, are not on a bus route, and families don't always have the car to drive kids back and forth, so helping out and as with field trips and things. Medical and dental, there are programs that are in Campbell River that support that, but sometimes families need a little extra to make sure that they can get their glasses or can do what they need to do. Personal hygiene project, this is very popular at middle and high school. Again, just putting things together so that somebody can come pick up a little kit for themselves and just not worry about anything. The calming tools for vulnerable learners, that's an interesting one. Again, just sometimes they need something just a little different, or they end up having to go home. So this is where just the schools are trying to be very creative and making sure that kids get to stay at school, families get supported in that. The grief and loss self-care kits are also, I think, a really nice one where, again, a lot of our families go through difficult times and not everybody has the same tools to support at home. So it's just a little kit that has things for them to do and help calm themselves. There's coloring books, there's different things, little brief books. And then washer and dryers, again, a lot of times, unfortunately, sometimes you don't have the ability to have all your PE equipment washed and at home, or just different things. So the schools are being very creative to think of ways to support the families and students in our schools that may not have the ease of access to all of the things that most of us do.
Yeah, and the nice piece in this again was it was for the context of the school, so you could see the needs at different schools were based on the needs in that context.
We're right on track. Yeah. So this one was a fun one. Again, we have a fair amount of allocation still there, but we started with looking at our winter break. As most of us look at our winter break as an exciting time to, step away from work and spend time with our own friends and families and celebrate meals and gifts and travel and all kinds of things. We recognize that many, many of our families cannot do that. And what winter break means to them is 2 weeks away from food programs that they often rely heavily on. So they're not able to get the backpack books, they're not getting the breakfast programs or the school lunch programs. So what we looked at was saying, okay, we have 2 weeks and there's 10 days basically, it's more than 2 weeks. Actually, way more than 2 weeks and 10 days. But so each student that schools had identified as a vulnerable child received a gift card, and we bundled them up and made sure that the family got the whole package of all of their kids. And that we supported 282 students in our district with something extra to help out during that winter break. We heard lots of comments through our principals of when they were handing it out, or the staff, some of the Indigenous ed staff, student support staff that supported getting the cards to the families, heard positive things, a lot of tearful moments of just really recognizing that the school is looking, recognizing who that family is, and that it meant a lot to them. So that was really great.
Maybe I'll just,
sure.
just a little shout out to quality foods, because number
Yes.
one, there was some difficulty actually in securing that number of gift cards. And a shout out to Deb Martel, because she won't do it herself, but Deb was persistent and really making sure that this was gonna happen, even though there were some no's from community around just getting that number of gift cards.
It's
So
not easy to give
But,
gift cards.
Deb through the weekend and spent a lot of time. So,
That was, yeah.
so thank you for doing that.
Food was not that hard. Like quality foods, absolutely. Quality
Yeah, they
food,
stepped in
right
like,
away.
no problem.
It was very. And then just going back to the Indigenous nations. So knowing that we have local education agreements and supporting students with the bands, the local bands, I contacted the bands just to see if there was funding that they could use, again, over the winter break, to identify the families that they specifically have in, within the various nations, and then create different things. So each of the band did something very different on how they wanted to support families. Some gave campers, some had gatherings and feasts. And again, I have to say that, in those conversations of phoning and just saying, hey, we have this opportunity. Can we look at, the school kids from Campbell River School District and how we might work together? And very, very happy conversation. So that's really a positive.
This one you'll see we haven't, like the current expenses are less than the allocation. One of the pieces is that we had been hopeful, we were working with a community group around a food program, and just for various reasons that didn't come to fruition. So we're just looking at other avenues, which was one of the reasons then we went towards the gift cards, which we plan to do probably.
Looking again at spring break, so that trying to, whether the gift cards were the same thing or a different avenue, but again, we know that times are coming up when where kids will be away from school. And then, again, just reconnecting with our schools to say, what's missing, what else can we do as a district? And this funding, Kevin, we might have to ask you just for clarification. If we don't use all of the funding this year, we'll be able to hold some of it for next year. So what we let the schools know, that's again, planning for September, for school fees and different things, and for our families that we know might have a little bit of a financial hardship, that we can put things in place right away.
And which was also nice. I think that was a recognition by the ministry that it might make sure it's thoughtfully spent instead of just using it up before the end of the year. So that decision was made, which is good because we have a plan but we still know now we can have a plan for next year too, if there's left. And that was just the original
Reminder.
distribution around it. So, yeah, we feel like there was some changes, but again, it's been flexible but we're on track and yeah, it's been nice to be able to support schools and families.
We've got a great partner.
Yeah.
So we work
Yeah.
well.
With these funds. Yeah, it is, and then that's the end of it. Make sure, yeah, end of slideshow.
Thank you so much, Deb and Brenna. The work that you do, extends into all households throughout our school district. It's with great gratitude that, the Ministry of Education did provide this affordability fund to help families out in these trying economic times. But I love the innovative mechanisms that you're using to really get those funds into the coffers of families that really deserve it and need it. Something that I found interesting is some of the pieces that you were doing around like laundry facilities for kids. Is there data being kept around kind of those requests for maybe community support groups that like a foundry to kind of advocate in community for sustainable resources for kids that are kind of showing some independence and maybe need a little bit more support?
Probably could, like, again, looking at, there's a need, so the schools have filed applications saying sort of what the need was, but once we get the devices in place and how many times it's used and just get anecdotal, but also say qualitative use of them.
It might be an interesting thing just to gather as we're going through the process anyway. Thank you. Is there any?
Yeah, I'm impressed by not only the, material support that you were able to offer through, supplies and food and cards and what have you, but I think the culture of caring that it exemplifies is so important in terms of the lives that those children live within the schools and the family connection to those schools and the positive outcomes that come well beyond full bellies is really exciting, really powerful. So thank you.
Yeah, and maybe that should speak to like the school administrators and their teams, because really within their school context and in consultation with their PAC or the stakeholders within their school setting, they came up with these plans to support the students at their school. So that, that we get to share the work, but other people are doing the work. So, yeah.
Just when you mentioned consultation, so just again, that's part of the application, for ensuring that they did include various members of the community in those conversations and building out their plans. Great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Jen?
Great initiative. I'm really impressed. I just wondered, if you didn't use up all the funds by the summer, might you consider doing something in the summer, for example, an initiative again with some of the nations to do something cultural and rewarding and food and everything for some of the children who would benefit from having that kind of support and a really culturally relevant way.
A great example or a suggestion. And one of the reasons I think it wasn't on our radar at the beginning, because we thought we had to use it up before it's May. So now that we know we can carry a portion over and depending on what's left, I think having the ability to do things in the summer would be ideal. Because again, the same thing, many of our students have I think we had close to 800, I think, that participated in summer school. But does summer school have, the nutritional programs and things? Can they supplement it in a way that helps out? So there's ways to think about that for sure. I really appreciate your suggestion.
Thank you.
Just very quickly, that the culture of caring, I just think is a wonderful approach, and I wanted to do a bit of a shout out to our community foundation and our Rotary Club. Partnered with students of grade 6, 7 class at Southgate, and they put together 155 care packages that went to Evergreen House, Rose Harbor, and Homologous. And so I think there's also that spiral we see of students learning to care for adults in their community. So thank you for the thoughtful way you approach this.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, and I very much appreciate the presentation and especially the good news. And I think just for me, it's just a reminder as well, you know, here has been a one-time grant of $607,000 to meet needs that existed in community prior to the allocation of this fund. And just acknowledging that our teachers, support staff and administration daily go about trying to meet those needs, but not often with the advantage of 600,000 to address that. And I would just acknowledge the complexity of our community, the families, the complexity for families to meet the fiscal needs of a family, the pressures that they face, and just acknowledge that those pressures will exist whether this fund, because it's a one-time fund. And so just also appreciating the fact that we're leveraging, trying to meet needs with community by community partnering. And so just acknowledging that we have this fund, but it's really amplifying and making aware how much need there is, because even that fund is not enough to actually meet all of the needs that we have. So I just wanted to point that out as well. So thank you.
Thank you, ladies. Thank you. Thanks.
So on to agenda item 12, which is elected and board matters. So it's the board work plan update. It has been included in everyone's packages. This work plan has just been updated to include some of the report timelines that we as a district will receive, and just to give new trustees an idea of kind of what it's going to look like as we roll out the year. I believe that, is this work plan available for public access, or is this a board specific document?
It's shared with the board right now.
Okay. So just, it's in your packages. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop me an email. And finally, on to, there are no educational issues, on to 14A, which is the final operating grant comparison. Secretary Treasurer Patrick.
Yeah, so in middle of December, but just before the break, we received our confirmed grants for this current budget year. Just make sure that you can see it. It is in your package as well. So yeah, so we've got our final grants. When we prepare our preliminary budget, we usually start in February of the prior year. We'll estimate how many students we're gonna have, what our special education students will be, adult education, DL, and it's an educated estimate on what we think that we'll get. And based on those numbers, we build staffing and build budgets around that. But that's not what the ministry funds on. The ministry will fund on what who we actually receive. So the students in our classrooms, September 30th, are what we actually get our grants on. So once they have that information, they will compile it and then they will confirm it and provide it back to us in a grant schedule, which again, we just got in December. So from that estimate, when you prepare, your actuals can be up or down. If it's down, it can be a very big challenge for districts when you've already committed staffing. But this year, what we have to share is fairly good news. So starting at the top, we've got some student allocations. The very top line is just our regular student population. Not a huge change from what we projected, 17 student difference. So relatively flat, small increase, $134,000. Then, so I guess on the left-hand side, we've got the preliminary, the yellow is our final. The next item is, and I'll point out a couple other things. Our online learning program last February, we had really anticipated it to be similar to prior years and somewhat comparable to a COVID year. Because a lot of our online DL students are returned to the classroom. So we have seen the online program decline in funding. We have DL is actually in a couple different spots here. So there is the $16,000 decline that you see. And then we also have DL rate on this line and this line. And we do those counts in February and May. Because we haven't done those counts yet, we're showing in the final is what the estimate is. But when February actually comes, what we'll see is we've forecasted 9 students. We'll end up with 1 or 2. So we do expect that the DL program that shows right about there, as well as some of these adult programs, will lose funding there. So there's it's not showing yet, but we'll see an additional decline of about $76,000. So our total base allocation, again, 200, actually, some good news that summer school. So we did see a growth in our summer school programming this past summer. The principals running it did a really good job in advertising and getting student engagement in it. So we did see a boost of 84,000. So, but really with that 84,000, it really just covers costs. So the total base allocation is showing an increase of 202. We're going to see some declines from the February and May, both the Con Ed count as well as the DL. So we'll likely, really the net benefit there is probably about 110. Is probably about $130,000. So that's our base. Now heading down to the next section. ESL, ESD is relatively flat. Indigenous Ed is relatively flat. But we did see some changes in our special education students. So you can see that level 1 went down, but level 2 and 3 went up. And so we have had some changes there. We also, as we come into September, we do make some staffing adjustments to support some of the changes up that are associated with those grant increases. Some of it hits the school age items at the top, and there are some impacts, some changes with the special education. So the total needs went up 706,000. Now another item that sometimes can really hurt districts is this next item being the salary differential. So we put our actual salaries in, and what the salary differential is as your salaries go up, the block amount doesn't go up. So this salary differential starts to cover it. So, but how the salary differential works is it compares it against the province, and we don't know where in the province we compare. So generally, when we get to this time of year, we've seen it drop by 400,000. We've seen it go up by 600,000. So for it to be up 230,000 is good. We already have our costs for that salary level built in, so that 230,000 helps cover. So we're looking at an overall grant increase of $1.139 million. We will see some reductions from DL. We have had some associated cost increases through staffing that are already in place to support the student changes. So the good news is we did build this year's budget with basically a balanced budget. So as we see the grants exceed the increased costs, we'll see that as a positive in the board's budgets. The hope is that that'll start to rebuild some of the contingency funds and get the board into a better position. As we go forward, we will be updating inflationary amounts and non-discretionary amounts will go up. We're not looking at this point. Our board's historical process has not been to add things at this time. If we do end up with more money, we'll see it through as a surplus to the end of the year, and we'll factor any surplus into budget conversations through our budget process that can then focus on spending through next year's budget. Some other things here. So you'll get that final budget February 28th. So 2 meetings from now, and so we'll have a much better idea of where the board's financial position will end at the end of the year. Settlement, so we're just in the process of settling labor funds, teachers, QP, and exempt staff. You'll see on here, there's no adjustment for those labor, settlement items yet. They will be funded, but they're just not showing on the schedule at this time. We will probably get those funds towards the end of the year. They will get it into this fiscal year. But what that means is when we actually do that final budget, we probably won't show the salary changes at that time. But when we do our financial statements at the end of the year, we'll have increased salary costs, we'll have increased grants to match them. So yeah, that's this year, again, overall positive. Our special education will need to see some substantial increase in supports through next year if these trends continue. We're going to be looking at our estimates for next year, basically right now. So based on what we experienced in this current calendar year, it's likely we'll be reducing some of our estimates next year and be able to increase supports for those needs. So is the upper track.
Any questions for Secretary Treasurer Patrick? Trustee Harper.
I'm just wondering if I'm reading this right. So there are only 13 FTE homeschooled students in the entire district? Or is that just the ones who actually follow the legal process of registering as a homeschooler, and there would be those that we don't know about, or what?
So legally, every student needs to be registered.
Yes, I'm aware.
What we found in our district though is not a lot of the homeschoolers have registered with our district.
Okay.
There may be reasons for it, but they will register with other districts, sometimes as close as Courtney. But they can be registered with other school districts around the province.
Oh, okay, so they can register with any, it's not resident based.
No.
Okay, that's what I was wondering, because it seemed to me like that seems abnormally low.
Any other questions for Secretary Patrick? Seeing none, thank you so much, Kevin, for the updates. It's positive news, and that's appreciated. It was a hard fiscal year last year. There are no recorded committee reports. I see no further other business. Are there any questions from anyone present on agenda items for this meeting, either online or in the room?
So hearing no questions from the room, or is there, I'm sorry.
Two questions. One, for the Student Family Affordability Fund. Are those things now at the various levels set in stone? Or if teachers thought of an idea, saw a need that was possible? Of course, we only have the 607,000. So, but for example, in the specialized funds, it was noted that something fell through and that is vastly underspent at this point. So is there availability? Because I'm hearing there was different ways of gathering feedback from people at different schools, and some are now just kind of hearing more about it and have some ideas, and others, you know, it was much more in depth than that. So just to utilize that money in an effective way, is that possible, or is all of the money earmarked under those tiers already?
Yeah, I think quite a bit is earmarked, but I think the intention of the plan was to be able to respond in a flexible manner and to be able to respond to emergent needs. And I think where school plans have largely been submitted, but there is a significant amount from the district initiative piece with an initiative that did fall through. So there is going to be more opportunity for further refinement and further responding to emergent needs. Yeah.
Great. And I'm just wondering, the board work plan was included in the agenda package. And I think that's the first, I didn't see it last year, or a similar document last year, maybe it's in a different format. But is that something that will continue, like the work plan and that, because it is a helpful document to know various things that are coming up and to watch for things that may appear in the news around the PCPC AGM or things like that.
Absolutely. It is our intent to be transparent about the upcoming work that we're looking at throughout the course of the year. I don't see any problem with including it. It's public knowledge and yeah.
And just a small comment, if you will indulge me, I didn't see on the plan and it wasn't in the correspondence, but we did send you a letter, as I had indicated in last, it was sent this week sometime, so you may not quite have got it, but I just want to highlight the fact that the union has submitted a letter requesting one of the board liaison meetings under the contract. So just to watch for that if you haven't already received that.
I did have an opportunity to respond to your executive assistant that it's in the works. We'll sort it out. Let's hang out.
Excellent.
Okay. So that concludes our agenda this evening. Looking for a motion to adjourn. Trustee Hagan, thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Great first meeting of the year.